The nitrogen cycle. So what exactly is it? The nitrogen cycle is a nutrient cycle where nitrogen atoms are circulated through the living and non-living environment. One really interesting thing that you might not have known is that 79% of the atmosphere is made up of nitrogen gas. However, living things can't use that nitrogen gas directly, and so we can only use it in particular forms. In terms of how we get nitrogen, heterotrophs like humans and other animals, we get nitrogen that's stored in the food that we eat, whereas autotrophs like plants, they get nitrogen in the form of nitrates, which they take up via their roots from the soil. Why is nitrogen even important? Well, it's required in the assembly of proteins, and proteins make up your muscles, your blood, your hair, and even your fingernails. Nitrogen is also a component of DNA, which stores all of the genetic information within your body. Just as a general overview with the nitrogen cycle, there's two main parts to it. There's nitrogen fixation and denitrification. With nitrogen fixation, that is when nitrogen is obtained from the air and it's fixed in a form that can be used by living things. Whereas with denitrification, that is when nitrogen is returned back into the air in the form that living things can't use directly. So nitrogen fixation is fixing nitrogen found within the air, so in the form of N2, into something that can be used by living things, whereas denitrification kind of returns the nitrogen back into the unusable form. Nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation is a conversion of nitrogen from the atmosphere, so that unusable form, which is nitrogen gas, into a usable form in the form of nitrates, and nitrates can be used by plants and animals. This can be done a few different ways. The first of which is just lightning. Lightning will strike and the nitrogen gas in the atmosphere will convert into the usable form. There's also nitrogen fixing algae found in water bodies. An example would be cyanobacteria. There are also nitrogen fixing bacteria in the soil, and sometimes some special bacteria can form a relationship with plants of the legume family, and there will be these nodules that will form on the roots of those legume plants, and those nodules would be the site where nitrogen is fixed. And what's really cool about that relationship is that not only does the bacteria benefit from it because it gets the nutrients from the plant, but the plant also benefits because then it gets the usable form of nitrogen. Denitrification is the opposite of nitrogen fixation. It is when bacteria converts the nitrates, which are the usable form, back into nitrogen gas, which is the unusable form. This completes the nitrogen cycle by ensuring a balance of nitrates within the soil and the nitrogen gas in the atmosphere. When an animal dies, its body contains nitrogen, and modification is a process by which nitrogen is then recycled after their death. Decomposers like fungi, worms, and bacteria help release this nitrogen in the form of ammonium back into the nitrogen cycle. However, most plants can't use that form, and so ammonia actually needs to undergo nitrogen fixation to then convert into the usable form, which are nitrates. This image here just kind of sums up the nitrogen cycle. You can pause the video if you wanted to copy out the diagram. This here is another diagram illustrating the nitrogen cycle. So it illustrates the same ideas but in a different way. You can copy this instead. Or there's also this one. And last but not least, one other diagram